Well, what's up, Colliders? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. It is me, your host, Daniel Blackaby, and I am joined at the desk, as I always am, by the Ken doll to my Ken doll, Mr. Samuel David Kemp. What is up?
Not much. Still have not seen Barbie or Oppenheimer, so I guess I'm one of the few Americans still in the dark about how great or not these movies are.
Yeah, well, Sam, you've met your like one movie a year quota, I think, already. So
Yeah.
you're gonna maybe wait for the home video.
Yeah, we'll see if it comes out on streaming, and I'll catch it. I'll watch it on my phone or something, as Mr. Nolan would approve.
Yeah, on your expired iPod. But there is a lot of stuff. It's one of those stories being Barbieheimer, the whole craze. I know last week we sort of talked about the anticipation of it. Well, now it has happened. It has come and gone already. So there's definitely stuff to kind of reflect on. So we will do that. But also just a lot of other interesting cultural stories, conversations, kind of some general themes. I get to step on a soapbox today that I've been building up for a bit of a rant, a bit of some thoughts on some trends that I don't particularly enjoy in the entertainment industry. So we'll get into that. And then also kind of the big, the buzzy cultural news thing of Lizzo and kind of all that's the fallout for that. That's still by the hour unfolding before our eyes. So we'll definitely kind of wade into a little bit of that and kind of, hey, what's going on? And as Christians, how can we kind of engage with that? Encourage you guys, if this is your first time or if you're joining us again, jump into the comment section, have a conversation, join us as we sort of try and engage with these topics and view them through like a biblical worldview and what do they mean, ask questions. We'd love to have you be a part of that, but there is a lot to dive into, so why don't we kick things off like we always do with cultural conversations. So kind of our first, I thought the first topic we could get into, I didn't want to wait too long for my soapbox. I've been itching at this as a movie reviewer, as a parent, to get into a recent trend that I've sort of anecdotally picked up on as I've been taking my kids to see some movies in the theater and just going to myself to review some of these animated films, and that is the increase in profanity. This is what all animated films apparently need is more cussing. That will save them. In a time where these movies seem to be struggling at the box office, the solution seems to be to have cartoon anthropomorphic animals dropping cuss words. So this is based on an article that we will be releasing that I wrote for the Collision on our website, thecollision.org, which should be out in the next couple of days. So we'll link it in the description of these videos. So I encourage you to check that out. But this is something that I've just I've kind of noticed, and having just seen and reviewed the most recent, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. And hey, there's a lot of things in those turtles' mouths, including swear words. There's a lot of kind of, I don't know, relatively speaking, a lot. Like probably 10 or more of sort of mild profanities. They don't have, Michelangelo dropping F-bombs or anything, but you do have characters saying hell and damn and some of these kind of more minor profanities, which, again, I took my kids to see that movie. I thought the movie itself was fine. But it just sort of irked me and kind of got me thinking that this is a trend that I've noticed. And like Puss in Boots, the most recent one, had some profanity in it. Various other, like the Spider-Verse movies, at least the most recent one, had a handful of minor profanities in it. And even like not directly stated profanities, like the Super Pet movie and Puss in Boots both had like a gag where they like bleep out a bunch of swear words. Like, what they're saying, but like you don't hear them saying it. Yeah. That's the joke. So I don't know. I thought we could. Sam might need to be my the more level-headed yin to my yang for this one.
Yeah, but how do you feel about all this?
I have feelings, which might inspire me to add to the profane language being shared. But because again, this is a thing. I know, which I kind of say in the article too. Like, it seems like a lot of the animated films are damaging for children right now. Like a lot of that conversation tends to focus on like the sexual stuff. Like, is it pushing LGBTQ agendas? Is there a transgender flag in the background? Like some of that stuff.
It seems to be more like culture war related, I think. A lot of the parental concerns about animated movies. And so I think less so on like things like just the uptick of profanity use. And I do think, again, and you talk about this in your article, but I think there is sort of this blending of audiences, and I think that's part of the problem is whether it's the creators or the studios that are trying to like kind of bridge that gap between like child, adolescent audiences and like adult audiences by making it more adult-like or dealing with themes that are more like interesting to adults. You know, Pixar, I think, has kind of blazed that trail and sort of dealing with heavier topics that would interest adults that some of it may go over the heads of kids. And so I think there's this kind of tug of war maybe, or just this struggle to try and make things that, you know, they want to kind of capture the mature audiences, but it's still at heart a kid's show. It's a kid's movie. And so whether that's like intentional or like, I don't know where that's necessarily coming from, like where the root of that is, but I think there are a lot, it seems like a lot of these animated movies are struggling with their identity, I think, in general.
Yeah, it is.
And it shows in box office numbers. And I think that's part of it. It's not just, I don't think, strictly like, hey, we put in a gay couple, or like, I don't think it's all cultural war stuff that's driving this issue with.
Yeah, I think there is because even like when I've reviewed some of these animated movies, I've got the occasional pushback to my thoughts with people, sometimes not nicely, sometimes nicely, letting me know that like the real problem is just my own narrow-minded, outdated view of animation as being for kids. And clearly, you know, we have Del Toro and those guys pushing that like animation is just a genre. It's not a
which is true.
Like I get, I think there is sort of some like leftover stigmas of like, well, cartoons are for kids, live action is for adults, where it's not like that's a cultural thing. Like there's not necessarily a reason like in a vacuum why the animated genre, like why not real life would be just for kids. Like a lot of the movies that are animated have focus for kids. Like we've sort of got into that expectation, but like in their own, like, and that's, I think, like like you said, the Pixar movie sort of started some of that of like, hey, what if we told meaningful stories that like went beyond poop gags and like.
Well, I just think too, I kind of reject this idea that like kids just need like a bunch of gaggy kind of silly, dumb stuff. Like I think kids are really smart and they can pick up on like more like meaningful themes and more adult themes, even like dealing with heartbreak or, you know, death or whatever else. Like I think kids are capable of handling a lot of that, but I don't think it needs to be like laced with a bunch of profanity.
Yeah, because even like my kids, sometimes I'll take them when I can to these movies to like review, and like they pick up on theme. Like they catch things that like even I was like, oh, I didn't notice. Like the characters, you know, they paired off according to their own struggles, and like, you know, I need to use that in my in my reviews, my thing. Yeah. Like, I think they can, and I think because of that, because there has been that realization, like you said, I think like a movie like Spider-Verse, like that's not a kids movie. Like that's a movie that is using animation. But like there's nothing. Is
it what's the rating on? Do you know the rating? Is that PG or is it PG-13?
I would need to see if someone knows in the comments. Maybe throw it in there. But I feel like it's maybe PG-13 because there is, but it definitely is not. Like it's not aimed exclusively at like this is for kids. Like it's aimed at, it's the same audience that they would expect to like come to like a main Marvel movie. And I get that. Like I'm fine with that. Like I enjoy, you know, I'm glad the Angry Birds kind of movies aren't common anymore. Like the real dumbed down, like, you know, kids are dumb, give them dumb movies. Like I'm glad that they're doing it. It's just the profanity to me. It's hard to find like the justification for why. And at least in the article, my own working hypothesis, at least, is that I think profanity has become almost the lazy shorthand way of like, this is not just for kids. Like this is like, you know, it's like obviously you can explore deeper themes and like more nuance to being a mature story, but like
Yeah.
you throw in some profanity and it's like, well, obviously this isn't, this isn't the cartoon, Fox Robin Hood movie. This is like a movie, which is
funny
fantastic.
enough. Yeah, it is fantastic. And my girls were watching that this morning, and it remains one of the greatest, I think, animations of all time.
Even without
who doesn't
profanity though?
Even without profanity, because who doesn't love to sing oodalade, oodalade?
Golly, what a day. Because even like I've seen like even faith-based films, again, I say this in my article as well, not to keep pushing that, but like it's become even like in that realm, there's been more and more like kind of traditional faith-based films that are the normal expected kind of film, but they have a few minor profanities. And like, where it's like, is that necessary, or is that like their way of like, you think faith-based are cheesy and sanitized, and like, but this one, like the character says a minor profanity on the phone, and it's like, well, is that like, can people not spot the difference? And I feel like some of it's that of, I don't know if it's just that now these storytellers who are adults obviously can get away with it, but or if it's like,
I think
we gotta show that this, we're not just making a kiddie movie, like we're making a real life movie.
Yeah, I think that may be part of it, and I think it's also, I think it is like the shifting norms of society as well. Unfortunately, I think, excuse me, is that like they can get away with more now, and so I think you again, you mentioned this in your article. It's like how that gag in Shrek was like a huge deal, like, whatever, 15 years ago, whenever it came out. And it's like, now it's like, wow, it's just kind of, and so I think things have shifted, but there doesn't seem to be a real reason for that shift. Like like, why does that need to, like, why is it important to have?
Yeah. Like what does that add to the,
because I feel like you could have a perfectly fine movie that's great and compelling without profanities. And it's like, are you getting emails like, how come that, that character should have said, F you in this place. Like, how come you just held back?
And are you actually appealing to older, like, is there,
is that the reason?
Like a 23-year-old, who's like, oh, I wasn't going to go see that movie. I thought it was for kids, but I heard that, like Puss in Boots swears one time. Like, maybe it's for, like, is it?
Yeah,
for,
it seems like it does seem like a very odd.
Which in the comments we have, Living by Faith says Spider-Verse is rated PG. So
yes.
It took my 5 and 9-year-old. I did not appreciate the profanity in that movie, especially since the first movie had no profanity. And I've heard that too. Like I know, even I talking to my brother before, I didn't know what I thought of the movie. Like the first one is a mature, like that's why we have the second one. Like it was so good.
Yeah.
And like it didn't have profanity. And like, again, I don't think, it's not like it's just laced with profane words, but like there is a 5, 6, it's totally needless. And it's,
I think that's the thing. And I think that's what you get at as well. It's just, there doesn't really seem to be a purpose for like the uptick in profanity. Like it doesn't, we can't see at least how it really serves any purpose. I think in certain circumstances it does, like, but those aren't in children's movies.
Yeah, because I'm of the belief that like I don't think profanity is always like wrong in movie or inappropriate. Like, you might choose that maybe that's not the movie you want to see, or still discern with some of that. But like, I don't think necessarily if a movie has if like a big war movie has like some profane words that like therefore it's a bad movie. Like, I think there is places where I can understand the like, okay, they're capturing this mood, they're capturing this like, and that's part of like the realism of it. I just don't make that connection to like Ninja Turtles or something where it's like, have they ever needed this?
Well, I think part of it too is like some of these movies, the characters are like teens, and if it's like teen characters, but it's a movie for kids, then there is that sort of like teens is when you try out a few words here or there. Like, a lot of kids will start swearing in their teens.
I mean, I didn't. Well, I know you went through a phase. But.
Well, it was a minor profanities, nothing serious. And so it's like, so I think there is some of that, like when your characters are like, a few years older, And so you want to be true to like how would a teen act in these situations. That's true. But then again, I just think make it not for kids.
Yeah, and I do think that, and maybe that's a good thing to end with, is like, I'm fully sympathetic to the idea that animation doesn't have to be for kids. Like that just because it's animated doesn't mean that, anyone over the age of 9 can't appreciate it. But I do think it's very clear from a lot of factors that, like, the people making these movies are very much the primary audience that they need to capture as kids, like these young families. They're glad if movies like Spider-Verse and stuff are glad if other people see those, but like they're scheduling those movies and marketing those movies very much. And if they don't get the family audience, then the movie doesn't do well. Like, it's not, they can't sustain themselves. Like, so that is still the primary, even if it's expanded kind of on the fringes. So at least to me, I think they still, in a time when these movies seem to be struggling, it just seems like a very unnecessary way to like distance and repel the audience that you're already struggling to keep. But hey, let us know if you guys are watching this or listening to us on the audio form. If you guys have any thoughts on that, if you've noticed that, maybe even other movies that you've seen that trend kind of happen in. And I do encourage you guys, check our website in the next couple of days, maybe even as soon as today. We'll have the article where we kind of get into some a little more depth with that. But something that often I think draws some profane thoughts from our viewers, and I know from me personally, is our next segment of our show, which we have Host Corner.
Well, speaking of plumbing the depths and deep thoughts, I wanted to go real deep on this Host Corner and talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and that is homemade pasta. And there's a blessed group of people that goes under the moniker Pasta Grannies on Instagram. I think they're on TikTok and YouTube as well. I think they even have a book. There's probably a website as well. But I stumbled across these just real heroes of culture, and that is these grannies, primarily in Italy, that are still making pasta the traditional way. And my wife and our 4-year-old actually made pasta that was delicious just last week, and so that's probably what put this on my mind. But talk about keeping culture alive, really. Setting the tone for the kind of world that you want to live in. Just go over to Pasta Grannies on Instagram and just enjoy some delicious pasta and the process of pasta making. And I don't think you'll regret it.
So I feel like I owe you an apology because, I joke towards you that the fact that you haven't seen either of the Barbieheimer movies, that maybe that would imply that you're not keeping up your finger on the pulse of culture. But alas,
boy,
I was wrong.
Were you wrong?
So if we want to dig into the deep thematic richness of pasta grammas, then
tell me, what could be happier than watching grannies from Italy making ravioli and then feeding it to their grandkids? Like, I defy you to find entertainment on these great interwebs of ours that can surpass just the joy and the simple pleasure of watching a grandmother make pasta by hand. You won't find it.
Which I do think, I know my family, we've been watching through the Junior Bake Off. I don't know what season we're watching, if it's the recent season or not, but there's something wholesome, like refreshingly wholesome about food, cooking in a context outside of America where it's all like cutthroat. That's very like game showy. It's just like, hey, here's nice people making food, and like they're nice to each other.
Well, have you seen and this is completely rabbit trail, but you've seen like the kind of making fun of like British competition versus like American competition, like baking competitions or cooking, and it's like, it's like the British one. It's like, well, we're all gonna just sit here and have a lovely time, and hopefully we'll make a nice cake. And then like the American is like, it's like, you're going to make this cake and we're going to remove all the flour, and then we're going to have the samurais come out here and you're going to have to like dodge all these bullets while making it, with one hand tied behind your back. And it's just like the most ridiculous sort of.
I know, it's like so stressful compared to just like the relaxing.
Because it's like, and the mystery ingredient is fish head. It's like, oh no, I have to make fish head cake again.
So if you
Anyways.
guys need some wholesome stuff to cleanse your palate from all the stuff that the less wholesome stuff in our culture, check out some international food cooking, not limited to, but including Pasta Grandma's Instagram. But
Granny's,
speaking of not necessarily wholesome, and as far as pop culture in America goes, kind of the next story is it's something that maybe is still unfolding, it's still coming out. It's not like a thing. So I want us to be careful that we don't like. That we're not. I know there's a lot of like reactionary.
Yeah, we don't want to come to conclusions necessarily.
Because this is the kind of story that feeds right into whatever sort of existing prior assumptions you had.
Right.
We don't care about the details. We just, of course, I've always knew that, or, it's all fake. But this is the Lizzo kind of controversy surrounding the singer, the entertainer, Lizzo, who I will be totally honest, I know who she is. I know by appearance, but until she starts performing some like European power metal albums, I won't be able to tell you what her music sounds like. She's not on my regular rotation, but I do know her as because she's always in the news. Like her, she's speaking up for championing like body positivity. She's like at all the award shows, and she's just speaking out for like racial stuff. She's always she's sharing her thoughts. She was even in was it the recent the Mandalorian the most recent Mandalorian. She even appeared in a galaxy far, far away, so she is everywhere, and she really has become like the face for a lot of these causes, especially kind of body positivity and affirming that. And but kind of that backdrop is why some of the kind of the recent released allegations towards her seem to paint a very different story. So some of her background dancers and people that have worked with her have sort of leveled a lawsuit against her. They're accusing her essentially of being kind of the polar opposite of what she stands for, like behind the scenes. That on stage, she very much champions these causes for body positivity and for inclusion and for self-love and stuff. But then in the actual working environment, that it is this sort of toxic, where there's she's shaming people and she's making them feel bad about themselves and pressuring them and not doing what's best for them. And kind of one of the in that statement, that the accusations, it says the stunning nature of how Lizzo and her management team treated their performers seems to go against everything Lizzo stands for publicly. While privately she weight shames her dancers and demeans them in ways that are not only illegal, but absolutely demoralizing. So that just came out the other day, and kind of since then, it's been pretty swift, intense conversation with people kind of jumping in to share their thoughts on that. And even Beyonce, I think, censored her name out of one of her songs or in her performances. Sort of everyone doesn't know what to do with this, and she has come up with statements, and kind of other people that aren't involved in the lawsuit have spoken up. And a documentary filmmaker kind of shared her story that, hey, I was supposed to make a movie about her, and 2 weeks in, I quit because she treated me like a jerk and she was arrogant, and I just didn't want to deal with that harassment, so I just left the project. And so there's just been a lot of that. So that's still kind of unfolding. So we don't really know what's gonna, what the truth of the matter is. There's lots of steps to go to find that.
Yeah.
But I do think there is, as Christians, it is a very relevant and I think interesting topic. But what's as a big Lizzo music fan?
Yeah.
What's your takeaways from some of these sort of controversial stuff?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is that it's unfortunate that there are a lot of people in Hollywood and celebrities, which it's maybe not surprising to some, but that their public persona may not be what their private character is like. And so we've seen this with Ellen DeGeneres comes to mind, that she's sort of this super nice, amazing person, but then treats all of her employees like garbage.
Or even like maybe even more seriously, like Bill Cosby is like
Yeah.
another, like, the American dad.
Yeah, I mean,
except-
it's like it couldn't be more different than like your like persona of this person versus like how they actually are in real life. And for acting, that's a little bit different, I think, maybe than just performers or, musicians and that kind of stuff. And it's on the one hand, you could say, well, this is just upset, fired employees that see a weakness in like getting back at their former employer, and hey, they can make these accusations, and now they're sort of on the front page of every newspaper or newspaper's website. And so there is that, I think, angle to consider of like maybe this is just kind of an easy way to make a name for yourself, or just to stab back at your
Because I will say,
boss
like the actual like writing, like the lawsuit or whatever, you read it and it's like, oh man, like that is pretty definitive. And then like I looked up some actual interviews with the dancers, and like, again, not necessarily to say that they're not telling the truth or like to weigh in, but like it, at least in what I heard, it doesn't come across as like it is a more gray, like. It's a lot of, they didn't say this, but I sort of perceived that I assumed that it was because of this. A lot of sort of, he said, she said kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the accusations are quite specific, and so I feel like there would be probably enough witnesses in some of these cases to sort of get to the bottom of it, and hopefully we will. But I think the other thing at play is really just, I think it reveals kind of that power dynamic in sort of Hollywood at large. Like anytime that you're in a creative endeavor, and like you've got a boss who's in charge of the project, and you're trying to make a name for yourself, or you just want to get work, there's a lot of gray area where it's like, well, you don't have to come to this thing, but if you want to get in good with the boss, like you should probably be at this thing that the boss asked you to be at, or said was optional, but we all kind of know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it's not. Like, so I think there's all these sort of nuanced pressures that go along with a dynamic like that, which I think it seems like it kind of just comes with the territory of just the nature of these creative projects, unfortunately. And I think the problem is if you have people who are not the person that they portray themselves as in public, then that can just create a really messy and toxic environment.
Yeah, and I do think, like, obviously it's easiest to see this in Hollywood because Hollywood figures are so prominent. Like,
it's so public.
Like hypocrites are everywhere, but like not every hypocrite is like covered. Every word they say is covered by every people and Variety and Hollywood Reporter. Like, it makes it more, which is the same as like in other fields. Like we've seen this happen a bunch with like in the Christian field of like celebrity preachers or evangelists and stuff. And it turns out, hey, they were this person, but like
turns out,
they behind closed doors, they were doing things that didn't line up with what they were preaching from the pulpit. So it's not just. And I do think, like even thinking through, like scripturally, like the Bible, pre-Hollywood spoke a lot about like Jesus. Believe it or not, like one of the first verse I thought of was Luke 12:2. Where it says, "There's nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known," and just the idea that like ultimately truth comes, like you can't, and maybe how the truth comes out might change. I do think some people, that's the reality of a fallen world. They get away with stuff, and that they never do suffer the punishment from it, or like the honesty. But I do think there is, like by the nature of truth, it does come like.
Yeah.
You can't fake it forever. Like when you interact with people, like, which is sort of like with the Lizzo thing. It seems like, I don't know the specifics, but it just seems like other people are coming out, and like it does seem to suggest there's some like record, like some habits, some like
there's a pattern perhaps
that hey,
emerging.
this isn't like totally out of left field,
Yeah.
one vindictive person. It's hey, if you don't treat people well, like eventually, despite the best efforts of like the PR.
Well, and I think like no amount of fame and success can necessarily like completely shield you from being a total, like if you are a total jerk and just mistreat everybody you interact with, like eventually like you're going to burn through all the people that you can treat that way, and you'll be left with no one. And so I think part of that is you can maybe see that starting to happen with her. Again, we don't know, but I think we will find out down the road here what is actually going on.
Yeah, because maybe even just like trying to do the right thing, but in the wrong way. Like I think that's a message that can apply to Christians, particularly. Like,
Yeah.
We're like, hey, maybe she did treat her like employees poorly, but maybe it came from a place of like just carelessness rather than like
malicious.
Like hey, she's focused, she's trying to do this good thing, and she has pressure, and she's sort of out there, and she just kind of gets distracted. I think that's sort of what you see with a lot of like in ministry and stuff of like, hey, they're trying so hard to like all their energy on this good thing that they just get careless with their family and with their people around them. And so I don't know. I do think they're, I think it's healthy to think through. I think it's also healthy not to be overly reactionary of like, I knew she was a jerk all the time, or how dare she? There's no way she could be a jerk because
big
she
surprise.
Said this. I don't think that's the main takeaway from this thing, but I do think that it is sort of a reminder of sort of these biblical truths of sort of, hey, backing up what we say, being the person behind closed doors that we are in public, and that ultimately like how we treat people and stuff will come to light in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a clever segue to our next topic. I had one on the tip of my tongue to use the atomic bomb, and figured that was probably not overly sensitive. So we'll just jump right to the next topic, which is the kind of the Barbieheimer, the Barbie movie, and the Oppenheimer movie, which came out a week or and a half or whenever that was ago, almost 2 weeks now. Kind of this big craze. The box office has been struggling. Not a lot of movies seem to be doing well. 2 movies come out on the same day, and they both do well, very well, both critically and financially. So we talked about a little bit last week, just, why that craze, why people were excited for it, and like 2 different movies and all that. But now the movies have come out. You have not seen the movies. I have seen both. I reviewed them. Encourage you to check out our reviews on our website and in our YouTube channel of both of those movies. But I did think there's been so many discussions about these movies.
Thoughts and opinions.
People have had opinions on both of those movies for very different reasons. But I think probably reasons that, although different from each other, are both relevant to faith and Christians. And I think particularly Barbie just in general has become a very hot topic, buzzy, almost like plant your flag type movie where there's, a lot of like, it's been dragged pretty quickly into like culture war kind of stuff. Whereas Oppenheimer is more like the content of, this the first Nolan movie to include like sexual scenes and nudity, and which has just become an issue for Christians to navigate for like, what do we do with a movie like this that, hey, it's actually, at least in my opinion, like a really good movie, but there's some stuff in it that didn't need to be in there. Like, how do we watch that movie? Do we not watch that movie? Do we watch it at home and skip through it? So that way we could just sort of reflect on a little bit of both of those movies. I don't know if you haven't seen, you only know these movies through my thoughtful,
through your thoughtful analysis.
Yeah. But either one of these that we should jump into, any other discussions that have intrigued you?
Well, I think the thing with the Barbie movie, I feel like is, it was kind of set up to be, it seems like kind of a talking piece in sort of culture wars, just because of the subject matter of it, and Barbie itself as a sort of a cultural icon that has had a fraught relationship with the public, let's say, as a toy, and so It's not surprising that it sort of just either confirms. It just kind of confirms, I think, whatever you already thought about Barbie / like maybe new wave feminism stuff. And so I just think it's one of those. I think it's going to be difficult for people to watch and not sort of just plant their flag on one side or the other. Like, I feel like it's going to be hard to disentangle it from all the culture stuff.
Yeah, I think it's become like the way I described it to my wife. We went together, so I don't have to go by myself to see the Barbie movie.
Though you would have.
Although I had a ticket.
You were willing.
I was going to take that plunge. But the way I described it to her, and she didn't. Like, if you read my review or saw that already, like, I think I've reviewed over 115 or so movies for the Collision, and like if Barbie wasn't my least favorite, then it's in the bottom 5. I guess to me this is one of the worst movies I've seen since I've started watching movies to review in the last couple of years. I just think it did not work for multiple reasons, but part of it is why I think it's become such like a buzzy, controversial movie, is that it's in some ways it's similar to like the Sound of Freedom movie, or like I described it to my wife as like this to me felt like probably what non-Christians feel like watching a faith-based movie. Like I think it's such a message movie. Like it's so like above all else. There's nothing really made me laugh. It wasn't clever to me. It was just very much a message, and whether you like that message or not is like maybe a different discussion. But like because it is so message heavy that it's become hard, I think, for people to, which is the same as like the Sound of Freedom movie, of like, like I got some pleasant some fan mail, some emails, some responses to like my review, letting me, kindly letting me know that this person's glad I don't have a daughter, and that I'm probably not a Christian, and that I'm a horrible person, and that I'm bland, like, several different adjectives to describe me, because I didn't think that the movie was well done. Like, it's become a movie that I think has revealed how difficult it can be to like disentangle the message from the movie, like, which I think is being the problem with faith-based stuff of like, hey, Jesus Revolution, great message. I don't know if it's the best executed movie, but like to say that, it's like, well, don't you believe in like God can do revival? It's like, well, I do. I don't think it was well done.
Well, I think it happens when like the movie, like when that becomes so entangled with the message, and to like, it's like people forget that like it is still a movie, like the movie isn't necessarily the message, or at least it shouldn't be, even though I think oftentimes it tries to be. But I think to like, you could agree with the message and disagree with like the movie as a movie, but I feel like we've kind of lost the ability as a society to be like, terrible movie, like, but I really wish that we could do something about like human trafficking. It's like, if you say that, it's like, well, you obviously don't care about the plight of human trafficking in modern society. It's like, well, no, I didn't say that. I said that was a bad movie, or I didn't like it, or whatever. But it's like, when did we become not able to like dislike a work of art, even though we may agree with the artist, or we may like the artist, or we may like the message that, like, I know what they're trying to do, but I didn't like the way they did it. It's like, when did that become not okay to like separate some of that, like the messaging, from the actual like execution and the product?
Yeah, like how do you, how can you sort of like objectively view it as like as a story, as a message, and like how those are different conversations? I do think it has revealed kind of some double standards for like, it's like, I feel like a lot of Christians just hate movies like Barbie because it's so preachy.
Yeah.
And yet like that's sort of the template that a lot of the movies we make follows, which at least to me shows like we don't really hate messagey movies. We just
hate movies that have messages we disagree with.
Yeah, like we like, if it's our message, then like, which is why I have a hard time affirming or like critiquing a movie just based on like the message. 'Cause I feel like that's just such a simplistic, like, it's a good movie if they do this and we like what the saying said. It's a bad movie if it's so I do think it is. And again, there's a bunch of other controversies, and like I think there is nuances to like, does Barbie actually present like a positive case for what it's trying to say, or does it reaffirm like what,
Yeah.
does it deconstruct body types and stereotypes, or does it like lean into those and like you know light the fire under like new stereotypes and like so there is a lot to it. We don't really, I guess we don't have a whole lot of time just for the Oppenheimer. I do think could you check out my review for that? The sexual elements has become
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like that is one of those sort of kind of to call back to our discussion earlier on profanity. It sounds, and again, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like this was one of those cases where it's like, was that, what was the purpose in that?
yeah.
And was that entirely necessary? And was the story forwarded by those scenes in the way that they were done? And it sounds like no. And so it's kind of a head scratcher maybe. Because I think so many people, myself included, love Nolan's work. And so it's kind of, well, what's the deal with that? Like, is that just because you can? Like,
because my takeaway, and again, Nolan would probably say a different thing and would have artistic justifications. Like, to me, it just felt entirely like hey, people have criticized my movies for being like very cold and like very like asexual. Like, he doesn't get into like, even romance is very sort of stiff in his, like, that's not his strong suit.
yeah.
He's more like the big concepts and like the premise.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Which to me, like, the sex and nudity to me came across like, hey, see, now I've done that. Like, I do that. Like,
Yeah.
very reactionary rather than like, hey, this scene, I can't communicate what I'm doing without having this actress naked the whole scene. Like,
Yeah, well, I saw, which I think maybe confirms what he was trying to like reject, is that like maybe he can't do those scenes very well. And it's like sure, he did a scene, with sex and nudity, but it's like it kind of seemed odd. And so like maybe just go back to not doing that. It's like you sort of prove your point that like you don't handle like those relationships very well in your movies. And so
because I really haven't
don't.
seen, again, I
Like,
haven't done like a deep dive extensive, but like, I know there's a lot of talk when it first came out, there's going to be sex scenes and everyone's like, finally, no one's giving us sex scenes. The people that felt like that was missing from like Inception and Interstellar and stuff. But from like even like the non-religious Christian conservative or whatever reviews, like, it doesn't seem like anyone is like, I don't think some of those people might not have the same like moral qualms as far as like,
yeah.
I felt like it's morally sinful. Like, they might be more indifferent, but like no one that I've seen is like, those added to the movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's just sort of like, oh, they have it, and then, but they don't really talk about it because it doesn't contribute to.
Yeah. Again, it just seems like completely out of place and like not serving the overall movie at all. And so it just kind of seems.
Which I feel like actually it's almost the opposite of like, it's overshadowed a lot of like the actual message, or at least for
Right.
some people. Some people might not care, but like, it's become a talking point. Where like, I feel like that wasn't meant to be the talking point. Like,
Right.
he was making bigger. He's going for bigger, more important talking points than like whether the sex scene was good or not. Like,
Yeah.
it seemed like a very non-Nolan thing. So again, encourage you guys to check it out if you guys haven't. If you're like Sam and you are just too busy watching some elderly ladies make pasta on Instagram and you haven't got a chance to check those out in theaters, check out our reviews to see if where I kind of break down the content so you know what to expect going into the theater. But speaking of theaters, kind of final thoughts here. I encourage you to check out, like I said, I reviewed the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, which came out yesterday. I think it's a good movie, despite some minor critiques. My kids liked it. It is a bit darker. It does have some language in it, but overall, and maybe even some like implied sexual stuff, but I think fairly clean, relatively speaking, to what we've expected in the last couple of years. Also, stay tuned. I am seeing arguably what will be a front runner for movie of the year when Oscar season comes around. And that is the Meg 2. I'm a shark.
Did they not blow up Meg in the first one?
Well, I think
is this like
I think there's more Megs. Is the premise for this thing that there's always another Meg
is
to
always
fight.
another.
This movie seems to be so awesome that they still have not had critics showings, and I see the movie as a general public in a couple hours. So they want to save the surprises. They don't want anyone talking about this movie until literally the moment the movie hits theaters. So we'll have that review out tomorrow, where I gush about the depth and excitement of Meg 2. So
And
check
how
that
it
out.
probably will unseat Jaws as the best.
Well, I want to go that
Shark
far.
movie
It
ever.
will remind me that I haven't seen Jaws probably for a couple months. Any other final thoughts for you? Things going on?
I think that's it for now.
So thanks for watching, guys. I know this is, if you're a parent or someone, back to school started, so it's the start of a new season. So I know things are crazy, so hope things are going well. But hope you will also join us next week, every Thursday at noon, as there's always more cultural conversations, topics to dig into. Would love to have you join us. But most of all, guys, thanks for watching. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.